Tasha Whitfield's boots hit the dusty Oklahoma Main Street with a confident rhythm that belied the restlessness in her chest. Another town, another week. Rodeo season was in full swing, and as the announcer, she moved from place to place like a wandering star, bright, visible, but never staying long enough to burn out. The small town smelled of hay, leather, and fresh coffee, a combination that always made her pulse a little faster. She hoisted her duffel over one shoulder, the familiar weight anchoring her in the moment. She didn't belong anywhere, and yet there was a strange comfort in the chaos of travel, the roar of the crowd, the crack of the bullwhip, the smell of the arena. Her first stop was the local saloon, a wood-paneled relic with flickering neon and a jukebox playing old country songs. She needed coffee, strong and black, and maybe a moment to herself before the first event. That's when she saw him. He wasn't supposed to be there. A man leaning casually against the bar, pale blue eyes scanning the room with the kind of quiet intensity that made her stomach tighten. His dark hair fell just short of disorderly, a few strands catching the light, and his jawline was sharp enough to cut glass, rugged, dangerous, and inexplicably familiar, though she'd never seen him before. He smiled, just the hint of it, and something in Tasha's chest skipped. He was the kind of man who made women notice without trying, the kind who owned a room by just existing. "Coffee?" she asked, sliding onto the stool next to him. "Yeah, black. Like my woman," he said, eyes glinting. She blinked. "I like a man who drinks coffee and talks too much." His laugh was low, amused, and full of warmth, a stark contrast to his icy stare. "I like a woman who calls out strangers. Bold," Tasha smirked. "Bold or stupid?" "Could be both," he said. The bar seemed to shrink around them as the afternoon bled into evening. Conversation flowed effortlessly, teasing, probing, full of sparks neither could ignore. She didn't ask his last name. He didn't offer it. There was something exhilarating in the mystery, the not knowing. By the time the rodeo's opening whistle blew, she knew she wouldn't see him again. Or, at least, she thought she wouldn't. The arena lights shone bright. The crowds roared deafening. But Tasha couldn't stop thinking about the curve of his smile, the way his hand had brushed hers when he reached for his cup, the heat that had flared without warning in the space between them. The night ended the way she expected, in his arms, beneath the stars, a wild dance of hands and mouths, heat and laughter, broken only by the coming dawn. They parted at sunrise, neither needing to exchange numbers, addresses, or promises. "Cash," he said, leaning down to kiss her one last time, his voice low, private, like a secret. "Tasha," she replied, her heart hammering against her ribs, and then he was gone, swallowed by the morning light and the rising dust of the town street. Tasha wiped a stray strand of hair from her face, heart thudding in a mix of thrill and fear. She had no idea then how much that one name, Cash, would change her life, or how fiercely her heart would be pulled back to him when she least expected it. A year had passed since Tasha Whitfield left Oklahoma with nothing but the memory of a single week, a fleeting name, and a boy she had promised herself she would never entangle in anyone else's life. A year of moving, announcing, and avoiding roots. The road had been her home, her sanctuary, until the assignment came through. The email was brief, professional, but enticing, high-profile ranching event. Oklahoma, 1 week. Full coverage, accommodations included. Tasha hadn't even finished reading it before her chest had tightened. Oklahoma. The memory hit like a freight train, the dusty bar, the roar of the crowd, the heat of his hands. And then she read the next line, Bennett Ranch. Her stomach lurched. Cash Bennett. That was him. That was the man. Her pulse quickened, and for the first time in a year, she hesitated. The boy in her life had a father, though that father didn't yet know, and now fate, or cruel irony, was forcing them into the same orbit again. By the time she arrived at the sprawling property, the sun was dipping low behind the rolling hills. The Bennett ranch was more magnificent than she remembered. Endless fields, pristine fences, and barns that gleamed under the fading light. A family name that carried weight, power, and expectations. And him, Cash Bennett, stood in the main courtyard, broad-shouldered and unmistakable. Even a year later, he exuded that same quiet authority, the kind that drew attention without effort. His pale blue eyes landed on her instantly, and for a moment, Tasha swore the world slowed, the dust, the horses, the wind, all of it melting away until there was only him. He didn't smile at first, just stared, as though he was measuring her, trying to remember her from the shadows of a memory he didn't yet understand. "Tasha," he finally said, his voice low, clipped with disbelief. "Cash," she replied, a flicker of nerves threading through her usual bravado. Neither moved closer. Not yet. Not here. Not with the ranch staff bustling nearby. He cleared his throat. You're the promoter for this event?" His tone was professional, but the intensity behind it was undeniable. "Yes," she said, keeping her voice steady. "And I see the Bennett family finally has someone brave enough to let me handle it." Her words carried a playful edge, but inside, her stomach twisted. She wasn't ready for him to see her vulnerability. Cash's jaw tightened. "I'll be watching. Closely." She tilted her head, pretending not to notice the heat in his gaze. "I wouldn't expect anything less." The first few hours were a delicate dance. Tasha moved from barn to arena, talking with staff, inspecting horses, checking schedules. Cash followed quietly, his presence both reassuring and threatening. She hated that he affected her this way, the way her heart skipped when he was near, the way her pulse sped when his hand brushed hers while passing her a clipboard. And then, during the late afternoon, as the sun cast golden light across the pens, Cash approached her alone. The horses snorted softly in the distance, and the wind tugged at her hair. "You look different," he said, his tone softer, almost intimate. "I mean, grown, stronger, harder to read." She laughed lightly, a little too loudly. "Funny. I could say the same about you." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him, the faint scent of leather and cedar. "Tasha." His voice dropped, a warning, a question, a plea all at once. Why didn't you tell me?" She swallowed, fighting the lump in her throat. "Not yet. Not now. You don't know what you're talking about," she said, a soft deflection, though the tension in her chest made her want to crumble into his arms. Cash didn't move. "I know more than you think, and I'm not letting this, whatever this is, go unnoticed this time." Tasha's heart lurched. Her secret, her carefully guarded life, was on the precipice of exposure. She looked away, studying the horizon, as if the setting sun could give her answers. But she knew it couldn't. And then, just as the first stars began to prick the evening sky, their hands brushed. A fleeting touch, accidental, charged, just a second. Long enough for electricity to shoot up her arm and for him to feel the same undeniable pull. Neither spoke, neither moved. But in that pause, everything changed. The week ahead promised chaos, competition, and complication. But one thing was certain: Tasha Whitfield and Cash Bennett were no longer strangers. And neither of them would leave things the way they found them. The Bennett family didn't do subtle. Tasha had known intellectually that entering this world would be like stepping into a storm, but nothing prepared her for the immediate barrage of scrutinizing eyes. Cash led her through the front doors of the ranch house, a sprawling two-story structure of dark wood and stone, the kind of place that smelled of history, leather, and lingering authority. She straightened her shoulders, keeping her expression neutral, even as her heart hammered. "This is my family," Cash said, voice low but firm, his hand brushing briefly against hers before letting go. That small contact sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. At the top of the stairs stood Eleanor Bennett, Cash's mother, a regal woman with icy eyes and a posture that screamed control. Behind her, Victor Bennett, Cash's older uncle, and a few other relatives followed, all staring like she had walked into the arena to announce a rodeo for the first time, except this was a psychological rodeo. "Tasha," Cash said again, introducing her. "This is Eleanor, Victor, the rest of the family." Eleanor's gaze swept over Tasha with clinical precision. "So, you're the promoter," she said, tone polite but sharp. "I hope you understand this isn't just an event, it's the Bennett legacy." Tasha's pulse spiked. She had prepared for the challenge of organizing the rodeo, not the challenge of surviving a room full of people who considered her beneath notice. "Yes, ma'am," Tasha replied, keeping her voice calm. "I'm here to ensure everything runs smoothly." Victor smirked slightly, a subtle jab in his expression. "And how long have you been traveling the rodeo circuit?" Tasha's fingers tightened on her bag strap. "Long enough to know how to do my job well." Cash stepped in, his tone clipped. "That's all you need to know." The tension in the room thickened, and Tasha felt her pulse quicken. She was used to hostile crowds, competitive announcers, and anxious rodeo organizers, but this was different. This was scrutiny with stakes far higher than she had imagined. Then came the questions that dug deeper, the ones designed to expose, provoke, and unsettle. "Do you plan to stay long in Oklahoma?" Eleanor asked, tilting her head slightly. Tasha's smile was polite but tight. "Just for the event. That's all I've committed to." Cash's jaw tightened as his mother's gaze lingered on Tasha. He could see the wheels turning behind her icy stare, the silent judgment, the calculations. He wanted to tell Tasha to stay strong, to not let them see her flinch, but he also wanted to protect her, something he hadn't realized he needed until this moment. Later, when the family had dispersed to other rooms, Cash leaned closer, his voice dropping to a private register. "Don't let them get to you," he murmured. Tasha exhaled, trying to hide the relief that swept through her. "Easy for you to say. It's your family." "They're mine," he said, "but right now, you and your son, well, we're in this together." Her stomach did a slow, sudden flip. Her son. She'd been careful, meticulous, guarding this secret, and now, with the family she didn't fully trust observing her every move, she felt the walls she had built around herself begin to tremble. Cash noticed the shift, and without thinking, he reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. A gentle, intimate touch, enough to make her pulse race, but not enough to draw attention. "Just be yourself," he whispered, his blue eyes piercing hers. "They'll see what I see." Tasha wanted to believe him, but her gut told her otherwise. The Bennetts were calculating, and she was an outsider. Still, in that moment, the warmth of his hand, the closeness of his presence, reminded her of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time: safety. And yet, the storm was just beginning. As she turned away to inspect the arena for the first time since arriving, she realized the stakes were higher than she ever imagined. Not just for the rodeo, but for the life she was trying to protect, the secret she carried, and the man she couldn't stop thinking about. Her pulse didn't calm until she felt his presence again, just behind her, close, watching, protective. And somewhere deep down, a part of her was terrified and thrilled to see how close they were about to become. The sun rose over the Bennett ranch, painting the rolling hills in shades of gold and amber. Tasha Whitfield moved like clockwork, clipboard in hand, checking every detail of the upcoming event. From arena gates to seating arrangements, every element had to be perfect. Her reputation depended on it. Yet no matter how focused she tried to be, Cash Bennett lingered in her peripheral vision. He walked the grounds like a shadow with authority, his presence commanding respect from ranch hands and event staff alike. And when his pale blue eyes found hers across the arena, she felt the old familiar spark, the same one that had haunted her since that week a year ago. "Everything's on schedule," she announced to the assistant coordinator, flipping through the checklist. But the words sounded hollow in her own ears. Her mind kept replaying that night, his hands, his lips, the way he'd whispered her name. Cash appeared beside her without warning, leaning casually against the fence. "You've grown," he said, tone low, private, carrying the weight of memory. Tasha felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "You already said that." He smirked, just slightly, the kind of smirk that made her pulse skip. "I didn't think I'd see you here. Not like this." She swallowed, choosing her words carefully. "The world has a funny way of making you run into your past when you least expect it." His gaze softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again as he spotted her son's small backpack peeking from the car nearby. "Who's that?" he asked casually, though his eyes lingered longer than casual should allow. Tasha's heart clenched. She forced a laugh, light and airy. "Oh, just a kid helping me out." Cash's eyebrow arched. He didn't ask further, but the flicker of recognition, the awareness that something was hidden, made her stomach knot. The day unfolded with precision and chaos in equal measure. Tasha moved from meeting vendors to organizing staff, and through it all, Cash never strayed far. His presence was a magnetic force she couldn't resist, sometimes hovering in the background, sometimes stepping in with quiet, subtle interventions that made her life easier. By late afternoon, she found herself alone near the pens, adjusting the placement of signs and banners. Cash approached silently, leaning against the wooden fence. "You're amazing at this," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. "I can see why everyone trusts you." Tasha felt a flush of warmth. Compliments from Cash Bennett were rare, and sincere ones rarer still. She looked up at him, a teasing edge creeping into her tone. "Careful, Cash. You're setting expectations too high." He chuckled softly, but his eyes held a seriousness that made her pause. "I mean it. You handle pressure like nobody I've ever met, and you do it with style." Her chest tightened. His words, simple as they were, pierced through the walls she'd built over years of independence. She wanted to tell him the truth about her son, about the secret she carried, but the fear of losing control kept her silent. For a fleeting moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, the sound of distant horses, the whisper of wind through the pens. Cash leaned slightly closer, a subtle test of proximity, and Tasha could feel the electricity between them building. "Why do I feel like you're hiding something?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Tasha's pulse thundered. She forced a laugh, keeping her tone light. "Maybe I like a little mystery." He studied her for a heartbeat longer, as if weighing the truth behind her words. Then he leaned back, eyes glinting with a mix of amusement and something unreadable. "Be careful," he said softly. "Secrets have a way of finding their owners." Tasha swallowed hard, heart hammering. She knew he wasn't speaking in generalities. He meant her. He meant the one secret she had promised to keep, their son, the child she had carried alone for a year. And just like that, the slow burn tension tightened around her like a vice. She had escaped once before. Could she do it again? Or had the past just caught up with her, in the form of pale blue eyes and a man who refused to let go? "Before we keep going, let me ask you something. If you were in Tasha's shoes, standing across from a man you shared one unforgettable night with a year ago, and now you're forced to work with him every day, would you keep it strictly professional, or let the sparks fly and see where it goes? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear what you would do. While you're at it, take a moment to like this video if you're enjoying the story so far. Hit the notification button so you do not miss out on more tale like this. Let's continue. The morning sun spilled across the Bennett ranch like a spotlight, casting the pens, fences, and barns in gold. Tasha Whitfield hustled through her checklist, but her mind wasn't on the event. It was on the small boy following her everywhere, carrying a miniature clipboard with a determined frown. Her son, Caleb, was bright, stubborn, and fiercely independent, much like his mother. But today, something in his expression hinted at mischief, the kind of mischief that could unravel carefully guarded secrets. "Mom," Caleb said, tugging lightly at her sleeve, "do you think Dad will like my drawing?" Tasha froze, her heart hammered against her ribs. "Dad?" She forced a casual tone. "Your drawing? Sure, sweetie. Who are you showing it to?" Caleb's eyes sparkled with excitement. "That man, the one with the blue eyes and cowboy hat." Tasha's stomach lurched. Not him, not here, not now. She followed him to the arena gates, where Cash Bennett stood reviewing seating arrangements. His expression softened as he watched Caleb approach, but the moment her son extended the drawing with a shy smile, Tasha knew the dam was about to break. "Here," Caleb said, holding out the paper. "It's for you, Dad." Time froze. Cash blinked, confusion flickering across his features. Then recognition, sharp, sudden, like lightning striking in the middle of a calm sky. He looked from the boy to Tasha, searching her face for answers. Tasha's heart thumped painfully in her chest. She took a step forward, trying to intercept, but Caleb was already beaming up at him, completely unaware of the world-altering moment he had just created. You called me Dad?" Cash's voice was a mix of awe, disbelief, and something deeper, something fragile and tender. Caleb nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, I made it for you. Mom said you were coming today." Tasha felt her knees go weak. She had been careful, meticulous, and now everything, her freedom, her son's safety, her relationship with Cash, was teetering on the edge of exposure. Cash knelt slowly to Caleb's level, pale blue eyes wide and searching. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Tasha whispered, stepping closer. She placed a hand lightly on Caleb's shoulder. "It's complicated." Cash looked at her, the intensity in his gaze cutting through the morning air. "Complicated?" His voice was low, controlled, but his eyes betrayed his swirling emotions. Shock, hope, fear, and something raw and urgent that made Tasha's breath catch. "Yes," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Complicated. Because he's my son." For a heartbeat, everything hung suspended. The wind rustled through the pens, a horse nickering in the distance, the world continuing around them, oblivious to the seismic shift in their lives. Cash exhaled slowly, leaning back against the fence, his jaw tight with disbelief and unspoken questions. Then he reached a hand toward Caleb, tentative, almost reverent. "You're my son?" he asked gently. Caleb nodded, bouncing slightly on his heels, oblivious to the storm brewing in Tasha's chest and the man before him. Cash looked at Tasha, searching her face, needing her to confirm it. She nodded, tightly, afraid and resolute all at once. He let out a slow breath, and finally, with a tenderness that made Tasha's heart ache, whispered, I'm not going anywhere, not if he's mine." Her chest swelled with relief, yet terror lingered. If the Bennett family discovered the truth first, they would never let it go. And Cash, would he forgive her for the years she had kept this secret? In that moment, though, Tasha allowed herself a fraction of hope. The boy who had been her secret for so long had just become the bridge between her and the man who had haunted her dreams since that week-long fling. The man whose name she would never forget, Cash Bennett. The Bennett family's dining room felt smaller than usual, though the tables stretched long enough to seat a dozen. The tension was thick, almost tangible, like the storm before a summer downpour. Eleanor Bennett sat at the head of the table, her eyes narrowing at Tasha like a hawk tracking prey. Victor leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing at the edge of his mouth, waiting for the moment to pounce. Other relatives murmured quietly, exchanging glances. Tasha's hands gripped the edge of her chair, knuckles white, but she refused to back down. She had survived rodeo crowds, aggressive vendors, and long nights on the road. She would survive this. Cash stood beside her, a silent wall of protection. His presence was commanding, unwavering, the kind that made the rest of the family hesitate before they spoke. "Explain, Tasha," Eleanor said finally, voice sharp as a whip. "Why did you keep him from us? From me? From Cash? Did you think we wouldn't notice your intentions?" Tasha drew a deep breath, keeping her tone steady. "I didn't keep him from anyone. I wanted to protect him, and I wanted to protect us. This isn't about money. It's about a child, your grandson. He deserves stability, love, and a father who's fully present. That's all." Victor snorted. "Stability? You've been drifting from town to town, announcing rodeos. You expect us to believe that this isn't about inheritance?" Cash stepped forward, his jaw tight, eyes flashing with anger. "Enough, Victor." His voice cut through the murmurs, low and dangerous. "This isn't about money, and Tasha's intentions are clear to me. You can either accept it or stay out of the way." The room went silent. Eleanor's gaze softened ever so slightly, just enough for Tasha to notice, but not enough to signal full approval. Cash turned to Tasha, eyes intense. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered near her cheek, warm and grounding. Tasha's breath hitched. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the pulse in his veins echoing her own. For a moment, the world outside that room, the judgment, the disapproval, the looming challenges, didn't exist. She stepped slightly closer, almost instinctively, and his eyes softened further, filled with unspoken reassurance. "You don't have to fight them alone," he murmured. Tasha's chest rose and fell rapidly. She wanted to believe him, to let herself lean into the safety of his presence. Tentatively, she reached up, placing her hand over his. A spark ignited at the touch, electricity that spoke of yearning, desire, and something deeper. Cash bent slightly, bringing his forehead to rest against hers. "We'll figure this out," he whispered, lips brushing her temple. Together. Her heart hammered, emotions threatening to overflow. Slowly, hesitantly, she allowed her lips to meet his in a soft, searching kiss. It wasn't urgent, not yet, but it was full of tenderness and longing, a promise of what could be. Cash's hand cupped her face, thumb brushing along her cheekbone as he deepened the kiss just slightly. Tasha's eyes fluttered closed, letting herself melt into the warmth and strength of him. The moment broke as footsteps echoed down the hall, a reminder that the world outside still existed, still demanded attention. Tasha pulled back slightly, heart racing, breath uneven. Cash rested his forehead against hers again, his voice low and intimate. "One step at a time," he said. "We'll handle them, and then we'll see where this goes." Tasha nodded, courage swelling in her chest. She had survived rodeos, drifting towns, and long nights alone. She could survive this, too, with him. And as they stood together, tense but united, she realized that for the first time in a long while, she didn't want to run, not from him, not from her son, and not from the possibility of a family she had never allowed herself to imagine. The sun was high, glaring off the polished arena fences as Tasha Whitfield moved briskly from stall to stall, clipboard in hand. Everything had to be perfect. Vendors, seating, sound systems, every detail meticulously accounted for. The rodeo was the biggest she had ever organized, and failure wasn't an option. Yet something gnawed at her, a prickle of unease she couldn't shake. Supplies had arrived late, signs had been misplaced, and a few horses were unusually skittish. At first she chalked it up to coincidence, but when the water troughs were found nearly empty and the equipment shed lock broken, she realized someone didn't want this event to succeed. Cash appeared at her side, as if summoned by her unease. His presence was steady, reassuring, but his gaze swept the area with a predator's intensity. "Something's wrong," Tasha said, voice tight. "This isn't accidents. Someone's sabotaging the event." Cash's jaw clenched. "I'll handle it. You focus on keeping the crowd and the staff calm." Her heart thumped at the authoritative command, the way he moved with control and focus, But when he brushed past her to inspect a fallen fence, their shoulders touched, and a shiver ran through her. The day stretched on, tension building with each minor disaster. By late afternoon, after the last arena check, Cash found her leaning against a fence, breathing heavily, the adrenaline of the day, making her hands tremble. "You okay?" he asked softly, stepping closer. His hand brushed against hers as he held out a clipboard. She swallowed, looking up at him, feeling the heat rising in her chest. "I will be. But I'm scared someone's trying to ruin everything." He studied her face, pale blue eyes locking with hers. "Then let's make sure they don't." And in that charged moment, the world around them disappeared. The stress, the chaos, the looming threats, all faded into the background. Tasha felt his hand rest lightly on her waist, warm and grounding. She looked up and he leaned down, lips capturing hers in a sudden, urgent kiss. It wasn't slow. It wasn't tentative. It was desperate, a release of tension built over months, a collision of longing and suppressed desire. Tasha's hands slid up his chest, feeling the hard planes of muscle beneath the fabric, her breath hitching. Cash deepened the kiss, his other hand curling around her back, pulling her impossibly closer. She pressed against him, the friction igniting every nerve in her body, every touch a promise, a question, a confession all at once. For a few stolen minutes there was no Bennett family, no sabotage, no judgment, only them, only the heat, the need, and the undeniable connection that neither could deny. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Tasha rested her forehead against his. "We can't. Not here," she whispered, heart racing. Cash exhaled slowly, gaze dark and intense. "I don't care about here. I care about you, always." Her chest swelled, emotion threatening to spill. She wanted to trust him completely, to believe that together they could survive everything. And at that moment, standing in the middle of the chaos, she did. But as their hands lingered together, fingers entwined, a shadow passed across the arena, a reminder that danger wasn't over, and that someone would stop at nothing to keep her from being part of Cash's life and the Bennett legacy. The first light of dawn painted the Oklahoma hills in soft shades of pink and gold. The world was quiet except for the distant nickers of horses and the whisper of wind through the tall grass. Tasha Whitfield adjusted the reins, her fingers brushing the worn leather, and took a deep breath. There was something about mornings like this that made her feel grounded, yet, with Cash Bennett riding alongside her, she felt untethered all at once. "You're up early," he said, his voice low, private, carrying a warmth she couldn't ignore. His horse trotted beside hers with a rhythm that mirrored her own heartbeat. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Too much to think about." He nodded, eyes scanning the horizon, then back to her, sharp and probing. "About what?" She hesitated, knowing the truth would unravel more than she was ready to reveal. "About the event, about life, about not messing this up." Cash smiled, soft this time, without judgment. "You've got this, Tasha, and I've got you." Her chest tightened. That simple statement carried more weight than she was prepared to handle. Her life had been about independence, about moving, about never relying on anyone. Yet here he was, a man she had barely known, who had somehow become central to everything that mattered. They rode in silence for a while, the horses' hooves drumming a steady rhythm, until Tasha finally spoke. "You don't know how hard it's been, raising him alone." Her voice cracked slightly. "There were nights I wanted to give up, nights I thought I couldn't do it without someone, without him." Cash's gaze softened, and he slowed his horse to match her pace. "You've done more than survive, Tasha. You've thrived, and I see it. I see you and him. Both of you." Her throat tightened at the words, and she swallowed hard. She wanted to say more, to spill the secret, but fear held her back. Instead, she let her hand rest on her horse's mane, her eyes meeting his. I can't lose him," she whispered, the unspoken truth hanging in the space between them. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "You won't," he said softly. "Not if I can help it." For a moment, the tension between them shifted from fragile to intimate. Tasha felt the pull, the undeniable chemistry, the connection that had been simmering since their first accidental meeting a year ago. She wanted to lean into him, to trust him completely, but the walls she had built were strong. Still, with him, they wavered. Cash's hand found hers over the reins, thumb brushing the back of her hand. "We're in this together," he murmured. "All of it. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Her heart raced. She could feel the electricity in the simple touch, the promise in the gaze that held her so completely. For the first time in years, she felt the possibility of home, of love, of family, of belonging. The ride continued, slow and easy, the sun rising higher, illuminating the wide-open spaces of the ranch. They talked then, really talked, about childhood, about regrets, about dreams. Tasha laughed at stories he told about his stubborn streak as a kid. He chuckled at hers, surprised by how much they mirrored one another. By the time they returned to the barn, something had shifted. Not everything was solved, not all secrets revealed, but a bond had been forged in those quiet moments on horseback. And as Cash led his horse beside hers, brushing against her arm in a touch that lingered longer than necessary, Tasha realized she had never felt more alive, more seen, or more willing to trust the man who had captured her heart so completely. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the ranch's main courtyard, but the warmth of the light did little to ease the cold weight pressing down on Tasha Whitfield's chest. She had just finished coordinating the arrival of the final vendors when Eleanor Bennett approached, her heels clicking sharply against the stone walkway. Cash followed closely behind, a steady presence by her side. "Tasha," Eleanor said, voice as smooth and sharp as polished steel, "I hope you understand that being part of this family is not casual. There are expectations, traditions, and reputations to uphold. You need to be certain you're capable of handling them." Tasha's jaw tightened, but she forced a polite smile. "I assure you, I'm here to do my job, and nothing less." Eleanor's gaze lingered, skeptical, but before she could reply, Victor Bennett stepped forward, arms crossed, a smug grin tugging at his mouth. "Your son calls him Dad," he said, voice loud enough for staff nearby to hear. "And yet, you've been hiding him from us for a year. Care to explain why we shouldn't think this is about inheritance?" Tasha's pulse quickened. She opened her mouth to respond, but Cash stepped between them, eyes flashing with controlled anger. "That's enough," he said, voice low but cutting through the tension. "Tasha's motives are not for anyone here to judge. If you can't respect her, then step aside." A hush fell over the courtyard. Staff and vendors looked on, uncertain, but Cash's posture radiated authority. He was calm, unyielding, and protective, and in that moment, Tasha felt a rush of gratitude and something deeper. She reached out, brushing her hand lightly against his arm. The simple contact sent warmth spiraling through her, grounding her amidst the chaos of judgment and accusation. Victor smirked, leaning slightly toward Eleanor. "I hope you realize what you're letting happen, Cash. This isn't just a woman. This is someone who could disrupt everything our family has built." Cash's jaw tightened, and he met Victor's gaze steadily. "She's not a threat. She's the only person I trust to handle this event, and she's the only person I trust with our son. That's final." Tasha felt her chest swell with pride and emotion. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt seen, protected, and, despite everything, part of something greater. Cash leaned closer, his hand brushing hers again, thumb tracing the back of her hand. "Don't let them get to you," he murmured, his voice private and intimate. "Not today, not ever." Her pulse raced at the intimacy of the gesture, the promise woven into the words. She wanted to lean into him, to let the warmth of his hand, the strength of his presence erase every doubt. Tentatively, she allowed herself a step closer, feeling the heat between them grow, a slow burning tension that had been simmering since their reunion. I won't, she whispered, heart pounding. For a fleeting moment, the world outside, the judgment, the disapproval, the sabotage, faded away. There was only the two of them, standing side by side, their hands brushing, their connection undeniable. Cash's lips curved into a brief, knowing smile. Good, because we're going to need that strength. Things are only going to get more complicated from here. Tasha's stomach fluttered with a mix of fear and excitement. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she did know this. With Cash by her side, she was ready to face them all. And as they stood there, hand in hand, a quiet intimacy settling between them, Tasha realized that the walls she had built around her heart were starting to crumble, and she wasn't afraid to let him see the pieces. The evening sky over the Bennett ranch was painted in shades of amber and rose, the kind of light that made everything feel softer, quieter, almost sacred. Tasha Whitfield sat on the porch steps, the day's chaos finally settling into a fragile calm. Her clipboard lay forgotten at her side, and her mind churned with everything that had happened over the last 24 hours. Sabotage, family confrontations, and the revelation that had changed everything. Cash Bennett appeared silently at the top of the steps, holding 2 steaming mugs. He extended one toward her without a word, the simple gesture carrying more warmth and care than any elaborate declaration. "Thanks," she murmured, taking the cup. The scent of coffee, rich, earthy, familiar, was grounding. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Tasha felt a familiar flutter in her chest, the slow burn of a connection that had been months in the making. "You've been carrying a lot," Cash said softly, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I can see it. I know it's not just about the event or the family, it's about everything." Tasha's hands tightened around the mug. Her walls, built from years of drifting and independence, trembled under the weight of his understanding. She wanted to retreat, to hide behind the facade of control she had perfected, but something in his gaze, steady and unwavering, told her she didn't have to. I was afraid," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid you wouldn't want to be part of his life. Afraid your family would never accept me. Afraid of losing him." Cash's hand found hers, fingers intertwining gently, reassuringly. "Tasha," he said, voice low and intimate, "you don't have to carry this alone. I'm not going anywhere. Not for him, not for you." Her chest tightened, emotion spilling over. She turned to him, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I didn't know how to trust anyone with him, with us. I've spent my whole life moving, keeping distance, keeping people from seeing me. I thought I had to protect him and myself from everyone." Cash leaned closer, brushing a gentle kiss against her temple. "You don't have to be alone anymore. You don't have to run." Her heart ached with longing and relief. Slowly, tentatively, she rested her head against his shoulder. The warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart, was a balm to her frayed nerves, a promise that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was safe, seen, and valued. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "I want to trust you. All of you." Cash wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer, as if sealing a silent vow between them. "And you will," he said softly. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time." The sun dipped lower, bathing them in golden light. Tasha closed her eyes, letting the weight of the past year dissolve in the safety of his embrace. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a future where love, trust, and family weren't just fleeting dreams. They were real, tangible, and hers to hold. The arena was buzzing with energy. Horses pawed at the dirt, riders shouted last-minute instructions, and vendors hustled to adjust displays. Tasha Whitfield moved with practiced precision, clipboard in hand, but an uneasy sensation gnawed at her. Something wasn't right. The morning had started smoothly enough, but subtle signs had already begun to pile up. Misplaced equipment, a loose gait, the sudden spookiness of a normally calm horse. Tasha's instincts, honed from years on the rodeo circuit, screamed that this wasn't accidental. Cash appeared at her side, his expression grim, eyes scanning the perimeter like a man expecting a storm to hit at any moment. "I've checked the gates twice," he said, his voice low. "And yet something still feels off." Tasha's stomach tightened. "It's sabotage. Someone doesn't want this event to succeed, and they'll stop at nothing to hurt the ranch, or me." Cash's jaw clenched. "Then we make sure they don't get the chance." As they moved through the arena, coordinating last-minute adjustments, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. A delivery truck supposed to bring essential arena equipment had tipped over. Tasha's heart skipped a beat as she realized the contents, lights, sound systems, and safety gear, were scattered across the ground. Her first thought was panic, but Cash's hand found hers, steadying her. "We fix this, together." They sprang into action, coordinating staff and vendors, moving with a precision born from trust and familiarity. The shared adrenaline, the closeness of working shoulder to shoulder, heightened the connection between them. Tasha could feel the heat radiating from him as they lifted equipment together, their hands brushing repeatedly, sending sparks through her chest. When the last crate was secured, they stepped back, breathing heavily, sweat mingling with the dust of the arena. Cash's gaze found hers, intense and unwavering. "You okay?" he asked, his voice husky. Tasha swallowed hard, heart racing. "Better, now that you're here." Cash smirked, brushing a strand of hair from her face, thumb lingering on her cheek. "We make a good team," he murmured. She tilted her head toward him, the tension between them palpable. "Yeah, we do." And in that charged moment, he leaned down, capturing her lips in a fierce, urgent kiss. It was more demanding than before, a collision of passion and need, a release of weeks of longing and suppressed desire. Tasha responded immediately, wrapping her arms around him, feeling the strength of his body pressed against hers. They broke apart briefly, gasping for air, foreheads resting together. The world around them, the sabotage, the chaos, the skeptical family, faded into nothing. There was only this, the fire between them, undeniable and consuming. "We can't stop," he whispered, voice low and intense, "not just because of the sabotage, but because I can't stay away from you." Her pulse thundered. "I don't want you to." The moment was shattered by a sudden shout from across the arena. Another gate had been loosened, threatening to release a herd of startled horses. Instinctively, Cash grabbed Tasha's hand, running toward the danger. The adrenaline surged again, and Tasha realized, no matter the risk, she trusted him completely. They were a team. As they secured the gate and calmed the horses, hearts racing and hands still entwined, Tasha knew the sabotage was more than just an attack on the event. It was a test, a trial that would either break them or bind them together stronger than ever. And as she looked up at Cash, sweat-streaked and eyes blazing with determination, she knew they were ready to face whatever came next, together. The evening air was heavy with the scent of hay and leather, and the arena had finally quieted after a long, tense day. Tasha Whitfield leaned against the railing, letting herself exhale for the first time since the morning's chaos. Every muscle ached from running and lifting, but her mind was spinning with questions, and her heart was still racing from the heat of earlier with Cash. He joined her silently, hands stuffed into his jeans pockets, his pale blue eyes scanning the arena before settling on her. "You held up well today," he said, voice low and intimate. Tasha shrugged, trying to mask the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "We held up well. You made sure of that." He stepped closer, brushing the hair from her face with a familiar, deliberate touch. "We," he corrected, voice softer this time. "Not me. We, you and me, together. That's how we'll handle this. Sabotage, family drama, everything." Her chest tightened, and she allowed herself a small smile. "Together," she echoed. For a moment, silence wrapped around them like a protective cocoon. Then Cash's hand found hers, fingers entwining naturally, the simple contact sending a familiar warmth through her. The bond between them, solidified over weeks of chaos, was undeniable. "You're amazing, Tasha," he murmured, eyes searching hers. "I don't say it enough, but you're incredible, strong, smart, fearless, and my son already adores you." Her throat tightened, a mix of relief and emotion bubbling up. She looked away for a moment, fighting tears she refused to let fall in front of him. I don't want him to grow up thinking he has to choose between us or feel like we're constantly fighting." Cash lifted her chin gently, forcing her gaze to meet his. "He won't, not if we're honest with him. Not if we show him that love doesn't mean compromise. It means family. It means trust." Tasha's heart swelled at the words, and she allowed herself a fraction of vulnerability, resting her head against his shoulder. They stood that way for a long moment, the arena quiet except for the whispering wind. But the peace was short-lived. A shadow flickered near the far gate, barely visible in the dimming light. Tasha tensed, eyes narrowing. "Cash, look," she whispered. He followed her gaze, instincts immediately on high alert. "Stay here," he instructed, hand squeezing hers. He moved toward the shadow, steps silent but purposeful. From the corner of his eye, he spotted footprints near the fence, disturbed dirt leading toward the supply shed. Someone had been there, someone deliberately sabotaging the ranch and the event. When he returned, Tasha was still gripping the railing, worry etched into her features. "Found something," he said, voice low. "Footprints leading to the supply shed. Whoever's doing this, they know what they're doing. And they're not done yet." Tasha's pulse raced. "Do you think it's someone from the Bennett family?" He shook his head. "No, this feels different, personal, targeted. Someone wants to hurt you or the ranch, and they're willing to risk everything to do it." Her chest tightened, and Cash noticed. Without hesitation, he pulled her close, pressing a protective kiss to her temple. "We'll handle it. Together. You, me, and him." Tasha looked up at him, eyes glistening in the fading sunlight. "I trust you," she whispered. "And I trust you," he replied. "Always." For the first time since arriving at the Bennett ranch, Tasha felt an unshakable sense of certainty. Danger may have been closing in, but they were no longer facing it alone. And as their hands entwined once more, hearts beating in tandem, she realized that trust, love, and family were no longer distant dreams. They were the life she was finally allowing herself to embrace. The arena buzzed with anticipation as the main event was about to begin. Horses pawed at the dirt, riders adjusted their chaps, and spectators filled the stands, unaware of the storm brewing behind the scenes. Tasha Whitfield moved briskly through the perimeter, clipboard in hand, double-checking every safety measure. Her nerves were taut, every sense alert. The past weeks had taught her that sabotage was relentless, and she couldn't afford a single mistake. Cash Bennett appeared at her side, his hand brushing against hers as he passed. The simple contact sent a spark through her chest, grounding her amidst the chaos. "Everything looks secure?" he asked, voice low. "For now," Tasha replied, scanning the gates and stalls. "But I have a feeling someone's testing us, trying to see how far they can push before they strike." Before Cash could respond, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the arena. A gate had swung open, and a startled horse bolted, kicking up dirt and chaos as spectators gasped and riders scrambled. Tasha's heart leapt. "Cash!" she shouted. "The gate!" He was already moving, muscles taut and alert, as he lunged toward the animal. Tasha followed instinctively, but he reached it first, grabbing the reins and speaking in low, calming tones. The horse's panic subsided under his steady hands, its breathing returning to normal. Tasha exhaled shakily, adrenaline surging. That could have been disastrous. The sun had dipped low behind the Oklahoma hills, leaving long shadows across the Bennett ranch. The arena was quiet now, cleared of horses and spectators, but the tension lingered like a stubborn storm cloud. Tasha and Cash walked side by side toward the supply shed, flashlights cutting swaths through the growing darkness. Every step was deliberate, every sound amplified in the still evening air. "I can't believe someone would go this far," Tasha whispered, voice taut with frustration. "Whoever it is, they're trying to ruin everything, the event, the ranch, and maybe even us." Cash didn't answer immediately. His jaw was tight, eyes scanning the perimeter with a predator's focus. "They're personal," he said finally. "This isn't random. They know you, they know me, and they know exactly what to target to hurt us." Tasha's stomach clenched. "Then we find them before they hurt anyone else." Inside the shed, scattered tools and overturned crates told a story of deliberate tampering. Cash's flashlight illuminated a small, nearly invisible piece of paper pinned beneath a heavy crate. He bent down, lifting it carefully. "What is it?" Tasha asked, peering over his shoulder. Cash's eyes narrowed as he read the hastily scrawled note. The words were simple, but the threat was clear. "Stay away from what isn't yours, or lose everything." Tasha felt her pulse spike. The sabotage wasn't just about the ranch, it was about her. Her chest tightened with fear, but also resolve. She couldn't back down, not now. Cash looked at her, his gaze softening. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, intimate. He reached for her hand, intertwining fingers with hers. "I am," she said, swallowing the lump in her throat, "because I'm not alone." He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The closeness, the warmth, the steady strength in his eyes, it was impossible to resist. Without thinking, she leaned into him, and he met her halfway. Their lips collided in a kiss that was urgent but tender, desperate but comforting. This time, there was no hesitation. Hands explored, hearts raced, and the tension of the day, the fear, the adrenaline, the uncertainty, melted into heat, desire, and trust. Tasha rested her head against his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her cheek, a grounding anchor in a world that suddenly felt chaotic and dangerous. "We'll face this," Cash murmured against her hair. "Whatever it is, whoever it is, together." Tasha nodded, feeling a wave of relief and determination. Together. They laid there for a long moment, hands entwined, silent but united, knowing that the stakes were high, the danger was real, and the bond between them was stronger than ever. And as they left the shed, moving back toward the main house with renewed purpose, Tasha realized something profound. No sabotage, no threat, no family drama could break the connection they had forged. Not now, not ever. But the note was only the beginning, a single clue pointing toward a danger that was still shrouded in shadows. The real challenge and the real enemy had yet to reveal themselves. Night had fully fallen over the Bennett ranch, wrapping the grounds in darkness. The only light came from the dim lanterns lining the barn and arena, flickering against the shadows like tentative sentinels. Tasha Whitfield moved cautiously beside Cash, the note from the supply shed heavy in her pocket. Every creak of the wooden boards underfoot made her heart race. Whoever had sent the threats had been careful, meticulous, and deliberate. "They're close," Cash muttered, eyes scanning the darkness, every muscle coiled and alert. His hand brushed hers, a silent reassurance that they faced this together. Tasha's pulse quickened. "I know. I don't want anything to happen to you." He stopped and turned, tilting her chin up with a gentle but firm touch. "Nothing will. Not if we face this together. Trust me." She nodded, allowing herself to rely on him, even as fear tightened its grip. A sudden crash echoed from the arena, metal clanging against wood. Both of them bolted toward the sound, hearts pounding. In the center of the arena, a figure crouched, attempting to tamper with the electronic scoreboard. "Stop!" Cash shouted, voice booming in the night. The figure froze, then bolted toward the shadows. Tasha reacted instinctively, racing after them, but Cash was already ahead, moving with predatory precision. Within moments, He cornered the saboteur near the barn. Tasha arrived just in time to see Cash grab the person by the shoulder, spinning them around into the lantern light. Her eyes widened. It was someone she recognized from the town, a disgruntled former contractor who had been passed over for the event's work. "You," Cash barked, jaw tight. "This ends now. Do you have any idea what you're risking?" The man sneered, cornered and defensive. "You don't get to tell me what to do. This ranch, this event, it should have been mine." Tasha stepped forward, chest rising with anger and adrenaline. "You're putting lives at risk. My son, everyone here, you could have hurt them." Cash's hand brushed hers again, grounding her amidst the chaos. Then, with firm authority, he pulled the man toward the house, ensuring he couldn't escape until authorities arrived. Once the saboteur was in custody, Tasha sank against Cash, exhausted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. He wrapped an arm around her, pressing her close, and for a long moment, neither spoke. "You okay?" he whispered, forehead resting against hers. "I am now," she breathed, feeling the tension drain away in his arms. Their closeness, the lingering fear, the relief, it all ignited a spark that neither could resist. Tasha tilted her head, and Cash met her halfway, lips capturing hers in a kiss that was both tender and charged with passion. This time there was no hesitation, no restraint. Hands roamed, hearts raced, and the heat of desire mingled with the relief of survival. As they finally pulled back, chests heaving, Cash murmured, voice husky with emotion, "I can't believe how long I've wanted this. You, us." Tasha smiled, breathless, heart full. "Neither could I," she admitted, "but I trust us. I trust you." He kissed her temple softly. "Then we face everything else together, no matter what comes next." And as they stood there in the dim glow of the lanterns, Tasha realized that danger, chaos, and sabotage couldn't break the bond they had built. It had only strengthened it, deepened it, making their connection unshakable. The morning after the sabotage was quiet. The arena lay still, sunlight spilling across the dust and hay, and for the first time in days, Tasha Whitfield felt she could breathe. Cash Bennett joined her on the porch, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the ranch. The tension from the past week lingered like a shadow, but there was relief now. The immediate danger had been neutralized. "You handled that well," he said, voice low, intimate. "Even with everything stacked against you, you stayed calm." Tasha smiled faintly, heart still pounding from the adrenaline of the previous night. "I had help." She gestured toward him. "Couldn't have done it without you." He took a step closer, thumb brushing her cheek. "You don't need me to be brave, Tasha. You've always been that. I just get to be here with you." Her chest tightened. The words, the touch, the soft intensity of his gaze, it made the walls around her heart wobble. She wanted to lean into him, to trust fully, to let herself feel everything she had denied for so long. The day stretched on with small victories, gates repaired, equipment checked, and vendors reassured. Slowly, the Bennett family began to come around, seeing Tasha not as an outsider or opportunist, but as someone who had saved the event, the ranch, and their family's reputation. By mid-afternoon, Eleanor approached, her expression softer, more contemplative. "Tasha," she said, voice quieter than before, "I underestimated you. You've shown courage and dedication, and I see now that you're here for the right reasons." Tasha's chest swelled. "Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot." Eleanor nodded, then offered a small smile. "Cash is lucky to have you, and so is our grandson." Cash caught Tasha's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. She felt warmth spread through her, relief and pride mingling with the quiet happiness of acceptance. As evening fell, Tasha and Cash found themselves alone on the porch again, the sun setting in streaks of orange and purple. They sat close, shoulders touching, the silence comfortable and intimate. Cash reached for her hand, fingers intertwining. "We've been through a lot," he murmured, eyes locked on hers. "And there's more to come, I know. But I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. Not now, not ever. Tasha leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. I believe you, she whispered. I finally feel like I can stop running. His arm tightened around her, drawing her flush against him. Good, he said softly, because you don't have to. Not with me, not with us. The sunset cast a warm glow over them, and for the first time in a long while, Tasha allowed herself to imagine a future, a life with Cash, with her son, and maybe even with a family she had never dared to dream of. Their lips met in a slow, tender kiss, one filled with reassurance, promise, and deep emotion. It wasn't urgent or desperate like before. It was a kiss that spoke of trust, healing, and the quiet joy of finally finding someone who saw her, really saw her, and wanted to stay. As they pulled back, foreheads resting together, Tasha whispered, "Thank you for staying. Thank you for believing in us." Cash smiled, brushing a gentle kiss across her temple. "Always," he said, "always," and as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Tasha realized that even in the aftermath of danger, even after sabotage and family drama, love, true, steadfast, and healing, could flourish. The next morning, the ranch felt quieter, almost deceptively calm. Tasha Whitfield wandered through the barn, checking on the horses, the weight of yesterday's chaos still fresh in her mind. But something about the ranch had changed. The family's grudging acceptance had shifted into cautious curiosity, and even the lingering tension from sabotage seemed to ease under the morning sun. Cash appeared beside her, arms crossed, but face unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, voice tight with a seriousness that made her chest constrict. Tasha looked up at him, concern flickering in her eyes. "About what?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's my family. There are things about the ranch, the inheritance, and my father's death that you don't know. Things that could affect you and our son." Tasha's heart skipped. She had known there were hidden dynamics, family secrets, but hearing it now from him directly made it real. "Tell me," she whispered, stepping closer. Cash led her to the veranda, the morning light soft across the porch. "My father, he wasn't the man everyone believed him to be. There were debts, alliances, and decisions made without my knowledge. When he died, it left the ranch vulnerable, financially and politically. And now, I'm the sole heir." Tasha's stomach tightened. "And the sabotage?" she asked softly. "Could it be related?" He nodded, jaw tight. "It could be. Someone may be trying to exploit the ranch's weaknesses, and to make things worse, there are people in the family who don't want me with you or our son. They see you as a threat, an outsider who could take what they think belongs to them." Tasha felt a rush of anger and protective instinct. "They won't intimidate me, or him, not our son." Cash's hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. "I know," he said, voice low, intense. "And that's why I need you to trust me. No matter what comes next, we face it together." She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. "I trust you," she whispered. I believe in us." He bent down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead, lingering in a way that made her knees weak. "Good," he murmured, "because what comes next will test everything. Our love, our patience, our strength. But I wouldn't want anyone else by my side." Tasha's pulse quickened, a mix of anticipation and desire. For months, they had navigated tension, sabotage, and family disapproval. But now, facing secrets that threatened to shake the foundation of their lives, the intensity between them, both emotional and physical, surged. Later, when the ranch quieted in the afternoon, Tasha and Cash found themselves alone again, the world shrinking to just the two of them. Their hands met instinctively, lips following in a kiss that was tender yet charged, a reaffirmation of trust and desire. Tasha rested against him, feeling the strength in his arms and the warmth in his gaze. "No matter what happens," she whispered, "I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever." Cash cupped her face, eyes locking with hers. "I promise you," he said, voice husky, We'll survive this, together. And when it's over, we'll build the life we've always wanted. For the first time since the year began with chaos and uncertainty, Tasha felt a flicker of hope. She had faced danger, disapproval, and sabotage, and through it all, the one constant was Cash. And as their hands remained entwined, hearts beating in tandem, she knew that no family secret, no threat, could sever the bond they had forged. The coming days would test them further, but Tasha Whitfield, rodeo announcer turned protector of her family, felt ready to face the storm with the man she loved and the son they shared by her side. The Bennett family gathering in the great hall was tense, stiff with unspoken judgment. Chandeliers cast cold light over polished wood floors, and every movement seemed scrutinized. Tasha Whitfield stood beside Cash, her hands lightly brushing his, drawing strength from his steady presence. "You need to understand," Victor Bennett said sharply, voice slicing through the room. "We're trying to protect the ranch. This situation with Tasha, it's inappropriate. She's not one of us." Cash's jaw tightened, his fingers tightening around hers. "She's my son's mother," he said, voice low, unwavering, "and I won't let anyone treat her like an outsider in this family. Not you, not anyone." Eleanor, usually the most composed, shifted uncomfortably, a silent tension radiating from her. "Cash, perhaps you're being rash. Consider the legacy, the reputation." Tasha felt a surge of frustration, the familiar sting of being judged and underestimated. But Cash's presence grounded her, reminding her that she was not alone. She stepped forward slightly, meeting the family's gaze. "I'm not here for money. I'm not here for status. I'm here for your grandson. For him and for the family he deserves, whether you accept me or not." The room fell silent, tension thick. Cash pressed a reassuring hand to her lower back, grounding her. In that moment, the world narrowed. Just him, just her, hearts beating in tandem, connected in defiance of the outside scrutiny. After the family left, the storm of judgment lingering like static electricity, Cash led Tasha to the privacy of the barn. The scent of hay and leather was grounding, a safe cocoon away from the cold judgment of relatives. He pulled her close, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You handled that beautifully," he murmured, voice husky. "I've never been prouder." Tasha leaned into him, letting the adrenaline of the confrontation dissolve into warmth. "It's exhausting," she whispered, "always proving, always defending." Cash tilted her chin, forcing her gaze to meet his. "You don't have to defend yourself with me. I see you, all of you, and I love you, every fierce, brave part." Her chest tightened, emotions spiraling into desire and relief. Tentatively she pressed against him, and he met her halfway, lips capturing hers in a kiss, both tender and urgent. Hands roamed, hearts raced, and the intensity of their attraction mingled with the intimacy of trust and vulnerability. They broke apart briefly, foreheads resting together, breaths mingling. "We'll face them together," Cash whispered, "the family, the threats, everything, and we'll survive it." Tasha's hand lingered on his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath her palm. "Together," she echoed, voice thick with emotion. The barn became their sanctuary that night, the outside world fading away. They moved to the loft, letting the quiet of the barn, the warmth of each other, and the lingering tension melt into a night of tender passion and healing. Every touch, every kiss was a promise, a reaffirmation of trust, love, and the life they were building despite the odds. By morning, Tasha knew one truth clearly: no disapproval, no sabotage, no family feud could undo what they had forged. Love, trust, and their bond were unshakable, and they had only just begun to fight for their future together. Thunder rolled across the Oklahoma plains, dark clouds swallowing the horizon as if the sky itself mirrored the chaos brewing at the Bennett Ranch. Tasha Whitfield moved through the main arena with tense focus, checking gates and stalls, her son close by Cash's side. Every nerve in her body screamed that the saboteur wasn't finished, that today would be the ultimate test. Cash appeared beside her, eyes scanning the perimeter, jaw tight with determination. "Stay close to him," he instructed, nodding toward their son. "Whatever happens, we keep him safe." Tasha nodded, gripping the railing, heart pounding. "We're ready." They barely had a moment to brace themselves before a loud crash echoed from the far side of the arena. A hay barn gate had been forced open, and a small fire had ignited near stacked feed. The saboteur had returned, bold and relentless. "Get back!" Cash shouted, grabbing Tasha and pulling her behind him as he ran toward the blaze. She felt the heat on her face, smelled the smoke, but he never faltered, moving with precision and urgency. As they arrived, they found the culprit attempting to pour accelerant onto the fire. Cash lunged, wrestling the man to the ground. Tasha's heart raced as she joined, restraining him until authorities arrived. With the saboteur finally apprehended, Tasha sank against Cash, trembling from adrenaline and relief. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight as if letting go might undo the day's victories. "You okay?" he murmured, forehead pressed against hers. "I am now," she whispered, voice shaky but steady. "Because you're here, because we're together." Cash cupped her face, lips brushing hers in a kiss that was fierce, protective, and intimate all at once. This kiss was more urgent than before, born of relief, passion, and unspoken promises. Tasha melted into him, hands clutching his shirt as if anchoring herself to him, to them. When they finally broke apart, breaths mingling, Cash rested his forehead against hers. "Nothing will touch us. Not them, not anyone. We protect what's ours. You, me, and him." Tasha nodded, heart full. Together she breathed. The tension of the past months began to ease. Later, in the quiet of the barn, they held their son between them, laughter and relief replacing fear. Even the family, slowly, grudgingly, began to rally around them, seeing that Tasha wasn't just an outsider, but a mother, partner, and protector of the Bennett legacy. As night fell, Cash and Tasha stole a private moment in the loft. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm they had faced together. They kissed slowly, deeply, savoring the hard-won peace, the intimacy born of shared danger and unwavering trust. "I love you," Cash murmured against her lips. "I love you too," Tasha replied, voice steady with certainty. "And I trust us." The fire in the hearth flickered, casting warm light over their entwined forms. For the first time in a long while, Tasha felt whole. The battles, the sabotage, the family drama, none of it mattered when they were together. The ranch, their love, and their little family had survived the storm. And for Tasha Whitfield, who had spent a lifetime drifting, it finally felt like home. Sunlight streamed over the Bennett ranch, golden and warm, casting long shadows across the fields. The arena stood calm, no longer tense with sabotage or fear, but alive with the quiet hum of everyday ranch life. Tasha Whitfield stepped onto the porch, sun in hand, smiling as she watched Cash ride across the fields, his figure strong and steady against the horizon. The past 3 years, chaos, sabotage, family tension, and uncertainty, now felt like distant echoes. Eleanor approached, her usual stern expression softened. "Tasha," she said, voice gentle, "I underestimated you. You've shown courage, love, and dedication that even I can respect. Your family." Tasha felt her chest swell, the warmth of acceptance settling into her heart. "Thank you," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "That means everything to me, to all of us." Cash rode up then, dismounting gracefully. He joined them, resting a hand on Tasha's shoulder. "We've been through a lot," he said, voice low, intimate, "but we're stronger for it, all of us." Tasha turned to him, her eyes glistening. "And we'll keep building together, our family, our home, our life." He pulled her close, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. Then their lips met in a kiss slow, tender, and filled with promise. The kind of kiss that spoke of hard-won peace, deep trust, and a love that had survived storms both literal and figurative. Their son giggled, tugging at Tasha's hand. "Mommy, Daddy, look!" Cash smiled, scooping their little boy into his arms. "We see him," he said softly, brushing a kiss across the boy's forehead. "He's our everything." Tasha rested her head against Cash's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. The past year of drifting, uncertainty, and fear melted away in the warmth of this moment. Here, surrounded by family, love, and the legacy they had fought to protect, she finally felt anchored. Eleanor stepped closer, placing a hand on Tasha's arm. "You belong here, all of you." Tasha looked up, gratitude shining through her tears. "I finally do," she whispered. Cash kissed her again, lingering, and murmured against her lips, "Home, Tasha. This is home, and we're just getting started." As the sun dipped toward the horizon, bathing the ranch in amber light, Tasha Whitfield allowed herself to dream for the first time in her life, a life rooted in love, trust, and family. The storms had passed, but the warmth they had found together would last a lifetime. Hand in hand, hearts intertwined, and a son between them, they stepped forward into their future, stronger, united, and ready for whatever came next. The Bennett Ranch was no longer just a legacy of the past. It was a home built on love, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of family. And for Tasha, Cash, and their little boy, the story was only beginning. And that brings us to the end of The Heir's Son. I hope this story gave you a reason to slow down, breathe, and maybe even see a bit of your own life in Tasha and Cash's journey. If you enjoyed listening to The Heir's Son, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. And I'd love to hear from you. What part of Tasha and Cash's journey hit you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for spending this time with me, and until next time, keep believing in love worth fighting for.